Atlanta Falcons general manager, the new general manager, Terry Fontenot, has announced and put out into circulation that Julio Jones is on the trading block. He is listening to offers for one Julio Jones. And my first reaction is, why? Granted, the Falcons have been very, very quiet about what they're going to be doing with the fourth selection in the NFL draft. We talked about it recently. I felt like the Falcons were being quiet. I felt like, hey, maybe they're still in the market to take a quarterback. But as time has gone on, it looks like they're more and more infatuated with Kyle Pitts, and the likelihood is that they take Kyle Pitts at number 4. So you have Calvin Ridley, you have Julio Jones, and now if you add Kyle Pitts to the mix, that sounds like an offense that I don't think any NFL defense would have fun going against, and that could be one of the best offensive combinations in the history of the NFL. It has the potential to be when you take one of the best wide receivers to play the game. You have an up-and-coming star wide receiver in Calvin Ridley, and you have a tight end who is projected to be one of the best tight ends to ever play the game. That offense is going to be incredibly scary. So my first reaction to Terry Fontenot saying, hey, we're taking offers through Julio, is why? Now, I understand that's a little bit more of a casual take on it, and sometimes the casual take is the correct take, and it's the fan in me, sure. I'm sure there's a lot of, just the general football fan in me that's saying, no, I want to see Kyle Pitts and Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley play on the same team together and absolutely decimate the entire football league, because that's just entertaining, fun football. But when forced to think about why the Falcons would want to move on from Julio Jones, the only real reason that I could think of would be salary cap issues. The Falcons had to do a lot of work to move themselves out of salary cap hell this year, and the only reason I would imagine that they're trying to trade Julio is to set them up into a better position next year, because Julio has one of the biggest contracts on the team, if not the biggest contract. I think Matt Ryan has a bigger contract, but I remember reading a stat before when it came to the Atlanta Falcons, and I think that the top 4 earners in terms of wages for the Atlanta Falcons take up about 25% of the cap space. Some ridiculous number. The top 4 or 5 earners on the Falcons earn a ridiculous majority of the entire salary cap allowed by the NFL when it comes to the Atlanta Falcons. So that is the only reason why I would imagine Terry Fontenot is taking offers for Julio Jones, is to kind of clear some cap space preliminarily for the next season, just in case the Falcons need to rebuild at some point. But again, the casual football fan in me isn't like, why? Don't do that. Like, give me this. I want to watch this. I'm not a Falcons fan, but just as a fan of the NFL in general, I would love to see Julio, Calvin, and Kyle Pitts on the same team with Matt Ryan, who is, again, one of the better quarterbacks in the league, falling out of his prime. And it's not like Julio Jones is falling out of his prime either. That's the other thing that kind of, makes me scratch my head and say, why is that? It's not like Julio Jones had a season like AJ Green just had, where he was formerly considered one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and he had just a horrendous year, and now he's out of Cincinnati. He's had a change of scenery. Now he's in Arizona, if I remember correctly. It's not like Julio Jones had one of those seasons and they're looking to move on from him and kind of playing the coin flip game on whether or not he has a return to form season. No, Julio Jones has been one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver in the NFL for multiple years now, and he's not out of his prime. He has about 2 or 3 more years of being the Julio Jones that we all know and expect him to be. So again, it's like, why? The only way, if I'm Terry Fontenot, the only way that I would actually give up Julio Jones is if I can get a team that is stupid enough to give me their first round pick and I can draft his replacement right away. Now, the Atlanta Falcons have a ton of holes to fix on the defensive side of the ball. Again, I think Julio Jones is more of the solution than he is part of the problem, and I just don't understand why you would trade Julio Jones unless you can, A, get a first-round pick. Maybe the Lions or the Dolphins would be stupid enough to give one of their 2 first-round picks, or excuse me, the Dolphins have 2 first-round picks, the Lions have 1, but the thought being the same. If you can get one of those 2 to fork up their first-rounder, or one of the first-rounders if you're trading with the Dolphins, so you can draft a wide receiver who could be just as good as Julio, but obviously on a rookie contract at a cheaper price, then it's like, okay. But again, the Falcons don't need offense. Offensively, the Falcons were fine. It's the defense that just completely collapsed and lost all of those games. Because remember, the Falcons last season had leads in a bunch of games, but the defense collapsed like they were playing against the Patriots in a Super Bowl. Oops, sorry. The defense is what needs to be fixed. So just kind of running through and multiple situations and talking about it in my head, the only real reason that I could see why Julio would be traded would be A, cap space for next season, trying to get an early jump on trying to mend the cap situation in Atlanta, assuming that they're a team that's on the bubble, could be a playoff team, could be a team that needs to nuke it and blow it up and start over within the next 2 seasons or so. So it's either a salary cap consideration, it's either a play by Fontenot to try and replace Julio with somebody younger that could be better. But then again, you would probably need a first round pick from one of the teams that are looking for a quarterback in the first round, or a wide receiver in the first round of this year's draft. So teams like the Lions, teams like the Dolphins, teams like the Eagles, the Patriots to some extent. If you can nab somebody's first round pick and draft a replacement for Julio Jones right away, then that would make sense and I would be okay with that. But again, it's not like the Falcons need help on offense, they need help on defense. So would you be trading Julio Jones for a defensive selection? Would you be trading Julio Jones for a first or second round pick in which you could draft a edge rusher or another linebacker? Now, see, those are kind of questions that are going to be answered within the next 48 hours, kind of like I said in the previous segment talking about Teddy Bridgewater, the Broncos, and the Carolina Panthers. These are questions that are probably going to be answered within the next 48 hours, but as the headline dictates, Julio Jones on the trading block, the main question that I keep coming back to and just saying is just why? Just why? I mean, I don't think that anything will come of it because the likelihood of them getting actual value for Julio Jones, not that he isn't valuable, but getting something that's the right package for Julio Jones, maybe I should say, I think the likelihood of that happening is extremely low, especially because what they would be trying to do and trying to manipulate that package into is a little bit far-fetched. And it would take a team making a real big pulling a real big bad mistake and trading away a first or second round pick to the Falcons so they could replace Julio Jones immediately, if they would want to replace Julio Jones immediately. And again, that just leads back into it, the casual football side of this, where it's just like, man, I would love to see Kyle Pitts, Calvin Ridley, and Julio Jones, because just Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts is not as entertaining for some reason. I don't know. So that's kind of my thoughts on the news that Julio Jones is up on the trading block or is being shopped by the Atlanta Falcons. Hey folks, thank you so much for listening to this segment from the Hard-Headed Sports Podcast. If you enjoyed this segment, make sure that you drop a like on the video and a comment. It helps me out a bunch. And if you're interested in watching more segments like this from the show after the show has been completed, you should definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you're interested in listening to the entire show in its full-length entirety, you should listen to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Anchor. Once again, thank you so much for watching the video. My name is Nick Ryan, and I will see you all again very soon.